What's the weirdest thing you've seen happen at a friend's house that they thought was normal? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. I went to visit a friend who lived alone in a huge, lovely old apartment in Queens. In a large room he used as the living room sat his recliner, and behind it another very large room connected by a wide opening which I surmised was originally the dining room. This room was completely filled by a colossal pile of Budweiser cans, nearly 6 feet high, and the pile was teeming with German cockroaches living off the remaining drops of beer in the cans. It seemed he'd bring a 6-pack of Bud to his recliner every day to unwind and just chuck the empty cans over his shoulder into the dining room. Needless to say, I was disgusted speechless, but to him it was just normal. Story 2. Not friend's house, but mine. My friend and I get off the bus and start walking to my dad's apartment. His apartment was below ground level. Anyways, I had been staying at my mom's all week. Open the door, and the entire apartment is flooded. I call out to my dad, who is passed out in the bathtub with the water running. Thank God he was the lowest level, or he probably would have fallen through the floor. Story 3. I had a friend with autism. That was nothing new to me since my little brother had Asperger's. She had a little brother with obvious development issues and a pretty stressed mother and a father that worked on the other side of the country, so he was only home doing weekends. I've never experienced a household with so much screaming and fighting. Both children was given everything they wanted, yet the big sister would push her brother around and scream that it was her mother's fault when she told her to stop. Their mother would spend the whole week telling them to stop fighting, but then their father would come home and play fight with them. It always ended with one crying. Even 13-year-old me could see that it was bad. Story 4. I was in my mid-teens. It's a hot day and I'm at a friend's house. We are watching TV in the living room. To my shock, my friend's mom walks into the living room, topless, no bra. She came in through to the left of the TV stand, so I just had to turn my head a bit to see her. She must have been asleep because her eyes were puffy and hoarseness in her voice, walking slowly, etc. This was around 2003 or 2004, so I had never ever seen anything like that in real life or online. Just a high school kid in an era of no smartphones. I was so confused. My mind was like, oh shoot, my parents will kill me for seeing this. LOL. The lady was in her late 40s, I think. A big lady. She says hi to me and I'm like, hi. Then she asked about my parents, etc. She knew them. A chat that seemed to last so long as I stared at the TV. She kept blissfully asking, and I remember trying to act normal by trying to make eye contact. I aimed to look straight up into her eyes, and I did. I did my best in being the most cultured kid under the circumstances. I was working so hard to act normal. Eventually, she asked my friend for something, and he replies. The hardest part is that the whole time, my friend's eyes were locked on me. I'm looking at the TV, but I'm seeing both my friend on the right and his mom's saggy jugs via periphery vision on the left. After she left, I felt a mixture of shame and disappointment, and I just wanted to leave. I don't remember what time I left. Parents, try to make sure your kids don't enter every home out there. Lesson to the teen boys. Even as a grown man, if that was to happen to me now, seeing that would still make me feel horrible about myself. Strangely, I didn't demean her as an indecent woman. The guilty feeling actually landed on me, and IDKY. But I think the lesson is that us men have an informal duty of preserving the integrity of women. In a way, ladies are all other mothers and sisters. The feeling you will get for seeing a woman naked in real life is far more sobering and solemn than it appears on adult entertainment. It hurts. The guilt and damage which comes exposure kind of relegated me from being a real alpha male candidate full of stature to being a pretender. Keep yourselves pure. Your older selves will thank you for it. Peace, Africa, the world. Story 5. I remember being in 9th grade and going to my best friend's house to watch a horror movie. I thought it would have been just me and my girlfriend, but it was the entire family. Mom, dad, 2 brothers, and the 3 sisters and myself. What was weird was that each family members made themselves a huge bowl of popcorn and melted an entire stick of butter to pour over it. It was so greasy and disgusting that they ate the popcorn using spoons to get every last drop. I was so shocked watching an entire family eating sticks of butter with their popcorn that even the movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre didn't distract my attention away from the gluttony of all this butter. I remember my mind kept that's why they all have such acne. Story 6. I was about 8 years old and I met this girl. Let's call her M. And M had a twin brother. Let's call him A. A and M always fought, but never physically, or so I thought. So basically, I went to her house for the second time. They got into a fight again like always, and all of a sudden they start choking each other. And I run to their mom who was outside, and she wasn't even surprised when she went down with me. They were literally trying to stab each other with steak knives. Their mom didn't even care. She just told them to stop. Story 7. I became good friends with a kid in school when we were like 11, 12. Turned out he lived down the street from me. First time I went over to his house, he opened the door completely naked. He acted like it was no big deal and invited me in. I entered only to find his older brother, around 13, and both his younger siblings, around 5YO, all completely naked as well. I was confused. Then we walked in the kitchen to meet his mom, who was wearing only her bra and panties. I later found out that they were just really open-minded toward nudity, and after a few months, I found myself not bothering to wear much clothes when I'd sleep over. His folks weren't pervy or anything, just nudists, I guess. After a while, I started really hitting puberty and actually ended up developing feelings for my friend, so the whole nudity thing came to an end real fast when that came out in the open. Not too long after my family and I moved across the state, and my friend crush and I never spoke again. Story 8. My friend's parents lived 2 different lives in the same house. They only shared the bed. The father constantly was in his basement working benchroom, smoking and drinking beer, while she was playing cards on the computer, drinking wine, both alone every day, while the kids used the living area all alone. Story 9. Not really seen it happen, but my grandmother's friend, for context, she's old but otherwise completely sane, said to my mom, "Oh, you wash the oven trays? I just rinse them off and leave them in the garden. After a week, the ants will have completely cleaned them off." According to my mom, she's always been this gross. But honestly, this takes the cake. Makes my wonder why my clean freak grandmother is friends with her in the first place. Story 10. When I was 16, I was at a friend's house after school. It was my first time at her house. At 4 p.m., she jumped up because her dad was due home from work and she had to get his drink ready. I followed her thinking she was going to make coffee. She started mixing a highball. Neither of my parents drank, so I was shocked. Sure enough, her dad stomped into the house like a cranky bear. He had 2 sips and was smiling ear to ear. I later figured out he had a drinking problem, but what did I know at 16? Story 11. Well, this is not something I saw at a friend's house, thank God, but my wife is a member of this mom group on Facebook, and there was a topic about how to clean a toilet brush. Apparently, some people think it's completely normal that you put your toilet brush in the dishwasher from time to time to get it clean. Imagine that as a table conversation after you just ate a meal there. Story 12. One of my best friends and very first friends in grade school lived in my neighborhood, so I would go to her house every day. Her parents were young and really didn't care about anything, so their house was filthy. Dishes everywhere. There was no room to walk because there was something in every spot. Well, as if matters couldn't get any worse, when my friend would eat cereal instead of pouring the leftover milk in the sink, she would just dump the milk on the carpet and move on with her day. Needless to say, after I was banned from ever going to her house because my parents were worried I might catch a disease. Story 13. I was at a friend's house and removed my shoes immediately when we walked in, holding them in my hands and asking where I could put them. My friend looked at me like I had 2 heads or something, said that I could keep them on if I wanted, or leave them at the front door. Then he proceeded to jump on his bed with his shoes on. Also, he kept jokingly insult his parents and swear in front of them, and they would mock him back and swear too. I was weirded out the whole time. Story 14. Fun memory. When I was just a youth, I went over a Why Not He friend's house for dinner, and they had spaghetti, which is great. I love spaghetti. They also had salad, which is also awesome. However, they put the spaghetti and the salad on the same plate and put a glass of milk on the side to drink. I got a separate plate for my salad, but you could tell they thought I was being unbelievably picky. Seriously, who wants spaghetti sauce on their salad or Italian dressing on their spaghetti? Thank goodness this was the pre-ranch days. And who that drinks milk with salad and spaghetti? I ended up drinking water. I'm actually getting kind of grossed out remembering it. Story 15. When I was 16, I went to one of my friend's house for the first time to hang out with him and some other friends. And we played Melee for a couple of hours in his room. Then we decided to head outside to play some nerdy LARP game we played at the time, and he suggested we stopped in the garage to get some soda from the refrigerator there. When we walked in, and we saw a little clay bowl sitting in the middle of the garage floor, covered in blood, guts, and feathers. Apparently his mom is some kind of practicing voodoo priestess or something, and she had actually butchered a chicken earlier that day as some kind of sacrifice for some ritual of one of her clients. The rest of us made sure in the future never to piss him off too much. We didn't know if it was real or not, but none of us wanted to risk getting him mad and having his mom curse us. Story 16-3. At the same house. I have this friend that I've known since 2003 in HS that I became friends with because of our common affinity for Star Trek and sci-fi. He's kind of more a simple common guy than me, always dirty, never washes his hands, anti-detail oriented, do-it-yourselfer type. He had been dating a girl that I had actually known since she was born through church when we were kids. The house was her stepdad's that one day just bailed on her and left all his hoarder stuff in the house, and my friend was living there, helping paying her rent, etc. The house was always in really bad shape and had a 4-feet brown stain in the middle of the floor, and one time I went over there during the winter, she was in the bedroom with the heaters on full under blankets because there was a huge 2-foot hole in the roof. They didn't really think much of it, and I thought it was weird that neither of them did anything to fix or block it, but just turned the heat up and complained about the $350 electric bill. Second thing was, they also told me they used to have roommates that were BF and GF. The GF I went to AHS with as well, and they finally kicked them out after she was having orgies. They also showed me their room with mirrors covering the walls and ceiling when I was over there one time, and told me she practiced witchcraft and would have weird seance and demon-worshipping sessions trying to hex people and stuff, and use the mirrors for that and demonic parties or something. Lastly, when they finally moved out of there, my GF and I went over there to help clean for the landlord, and my GF asked what the giant brown stain was. My friend casually told us, that's where that lady died. His GF's dad who bailed apparently had an addict GF who OD'd, and during some accident somehow bled out on the carpet. I also have another friend whose mom was an extreme cheapskate, wouldn't run the dryer and dried the clothes on lines even in the winter, and instead of using expensive maple syrup or regular syrup, would give us corn syrup for pancakes in a bulk container. Story 17. In high school, a friend and I went to a later movie, then planned to sleep over at her house. The movie got done around 10 p.m.-ish. The house was dark as her parents were early to bed. As we walked in her back door, there was a distinct sound of a shotgun being racked and her father saying, "Who's there?" My friend just calmly says, "Oh, it's just us." And that was that. One and only time I've had a gun pulled on me. Story 18. Used to hang at my one bro's parents' house. He stayed in the basement, had a low-paying job. Whatever, he makes dough now. Anyway, we would get cheap food from McDonald's usually. It was when the McChicken first came out in the dollar menu, around when Subway came out with the $5 footlong. But we used to drink beers and get hungry, and Subway was always closed by this time, so one of us would run to McDonald's and get like 6 McChickens. Well, he would always only eat 2 and put one in his sock drawer. Thought maybe he had an elf to feed when I left or something. Nope, he was eating it later or the next day. He even would stash one under the seat in his car when he drove to grab them. Long story short, he got diverticulitis after doing this for years. Neither of us eat McDonald's anymore. Story 19. Was staying over at acquaintance's house. They have marriage and mom sleeps with son in a bedroom and dad sleeps with daughter in daughter's bedroom. They've been sleeping with kids this way since they were 3, and I was at their place last time. They already turned 10-ish, and their parents still did that. I personally find it messed up at. They should be about 15 now, and I hope they stop that. Story 20. We're genuinely not hoarders, but we have a lot of food, drink, because my mom, Dad, and Grandma all go grocery shopping without consulting the others. Often this results in us having a lot of Coke cans, and so we started putting them in the guest bathroom shower for storage, to the point where my dad actually installed some IKEA shelves in there. So a normal phrase in my household was, "Mind grabbing me a Coke from the shower?" And I know that's relatively tame for what I've read on here, but it's still a weird thing my family used to do. Story 21. When I was a kid, my mom had to go do something one night and needed a babysitter for me and my younger brother. She ended up bringing us to my cousin's wife's house, who was morbidly obese and had 3 boys of her own. I remember when dinner time came around, we sat at the table, like we were used to, and she brought out 5 cans of beans and gave us all one. I had no idea what in the hell was happening, and my little brother was just as clueless. Our mom always made nice dinners every night that we ate together at the table. So my brother and I ended up taking our cans and rolling them under her couch and not eating at all. Like, who TF gives kids a can of beans? Wild. Story 22. Had a close friend all throughout school whose family had a rule. When dad was in the computer room, no one else was to go in. Ever. It didn't matter if he was the only adult home. We were to knock, yell whatever we needed through the door, and wait for him to come out. He was a nice enough man and always seemed to try really hard to make us feel very comfortable around him. He also would often engage in tickle fights with us and walk around, hang out around the house in only underwear, which I didn't realize was odd until I was 13. I found out my senior year of high school while that friend's parents were going through a nasty divorce that he had loads of CP on that computer and had even tried paying his own children to undress for him so he could watch. Story 23. When me and my friend were in about year 2, grade 2 for Americans, I would always go to my friend's house and play with his Lego set, but the only problem we encountered was his big brother. Anytime he saw us play with my friend's Lego, he would get really pissed off and started shouting and screaming, but little me thought that maybe he is just angry. My friend would then get into fights with his big brother, and now after a couple of years I realized his big brother was quite abusive. Story 24. I was humiliatingly old when I learned it wasn't normal for my dad to sleep with me. It just seems so unbelievable in hindsight, as a 20-something-year-old, that 10-year-old me didn't, realize something was wrong about it. It's not like I wanted it, believe me, I didn't. But he'd always told me that's how fathers and daughters showed they cared about each other. So I guess I managed to convince myself I was the problem for not enjoying what he did to me, had me do to him instead of the other way around. I always felt so guilty about hating it. Sometimes I still feel guilty about that, even though the fully logical, non-emotional part of me knows I shouldn't. I understand he was a monster, and if he'd done those things to anybody else, I would be beyond enraged, horrified. But I remember as a kid, I just wanted him to love me so badly, I went along with everything. And I've had a hard time separating those feelings from reality. Story 25. I tried to make friends with this one kid, back in grade 6, who was actively bullied and made fun of by a lot of the other kids in our class. I was invited by his mom for a sleepover one night. Apparently she had a planned-out schedule of events every day for him. Before supper, play Earthbound on the Super Nintendo, a game she specifically approved of because the name in Japan was Mother, and this appeared to be wholesome in nature simply based on the name. I believe this was only like 10 minutes total, essentially waiting for supper. Supper went well, nothing too out of the ordinary other than being almost directly after school, 4 p.m.-ish. 2, play Nerf guns in the house, which sounded fun at first, however, as it turns out, she removed the foam ends as they apparently hurt too much. Then she simply taped over the holes to allow the guns to still propel darts forward, barely. Maybe a half hour total there. 3, then we would watch an adult comedy, as it was a special occasion. This turned out to be Leonard Part 6, starring Bill Cosby, a PG movie. This was the most adult thing the boy had ever seen, and was beyond excited, because my existence in the house meant he could be naughty tonight, as he told me. Their movie cabinet was filled almost entirely with Bill Cosby specials, VHS tapes of The Cosby Show, as well as other Bill Cosby movies, and a few Whoopi Goldberg classics. Finally, it was time for bed at 7 p.m., where the mom tucked us in, and I mean tucked us in tight, and gave us both flashlights so we could have laser sword battles during the rundown of the timer she left on the dresser. Once that timer was run down, she requested that we be asleep. The next morning at breakfast, I heard the boy tell his mom that having a friend over was not as exciting as he had hoped, and he was eager for me to leave so that things could get back to just being him in the house. I grabbed my things and walked home, maybe a half-hour walk. Story 26, I used to hang out with this one friend in 6th grade, and I remember one time I went over their house and they would have their dogs lick their dishes after they were done eating, and that was how they cleaned them. They would literally put a dish that their dog licked up back in the cupboards and drawers and use them again later. It was absolutely disgusting, but I thought it was completely normal as a kid. Story 27. We were going around early evening to a friend from school, Andy's house, to play D&D. We were total geeks. His dad let us in as we walked through the front door. His sister was on her way out looking super fit, cue-raging teenager hormones. As she was going out, she kissed both Andy and her dad on the lips. Weirdest thing we had ever seen. He thought it was normal. Still think it's really odd even now. Story 28. In middle school, I had a friend who one day he invited me over to play some WWF No Mercy. We get to his house and I meet his parents and his sister. So far, everything is cool. Then we get to his room that he shares with his sister, a year older than him, and we start playing the game. 5 minutes later, his sister comes in, only wearing a bath towel, hides under her bed covers, and starts masturbating. I stop playing and ask about it, but he just shrugs it off and tells me that she does that a lot. After that, I insisted on hanging out at my house. Story 29. I was a 10-year-old boy living in a suburban area in Michigan. It was a Saturday. My mom said I could go over to a friend's house, a boy I knew from school, We'd played after school quite a few times, but we'd never spent time in each other's homes. When I got there around mid-morning, the family was getting ready to go to the beach. He had a brother and 4 sisters, so there was a lot of activity. His mom said to call my mom and ask if I could go with them. She spoke to my mom, and my mom said I could go. We had a great time. When we got home, all the kids ran to the outdoor shower to rinse off. It was behind the house in the backyard. The oldest sister, who was 14, disappeared into the house and came out with a stack of towels. My friend Joe turned on and adjusted the water. He suddenly striped off his swimsuit and began to soap up. That was when I noticed the others were naked too. Joe's older sister told me I had to shower before going in the house. I remember feeling embarrassed, but I took off my suit and did as I was told. Then Joe's mom came out carrying his 3-year-old brother and stepped under the shower with the little boy. Joe's mom was naked too, and his dad came out and off came his bathing suit. There were 2 shower heads and everyone was jumping in and out of the water and soaping and shampooing. Everyone dried off and headed into the house. It was chaotic, as large families can be. Kids grabbing sodas from the fridge and fighting over who got what seat on the couches to watch TV and what show to watch. Joe's mother yelling that there was no snacking before dinner and so on, except that everyone was naked, as natural as could be. I think I got over my embarrassment, but I thought it was crazy. I found out later they were a nudist family, but I had never heard of such a thing. They were very open about other things as well. The mother came into the living room at one point, and looking at Joe's 6-year-old sister, she told her to go to her room if she wanted to masturbate. I didn't know what that was, but as I looked at the girl sitting cross-legged on the floor, I saw her hand was on her vagina. I really got my eyes open that day. It's funny, but the only time I was embarrassed was when I was looking at the 12 and 14-year-old sisters. Well, I was a 10-year-old boy, so not so odd. I eventually told my mom about it. She didn't really forbid me from going to Joe's home, but she did discourage it. About a year later, Joe's dad, who was an FBI agent, got transferred to another state, and they moved. Wow, weird. Story 30. In the 70s, I made a friend that just moved into the neighborhood. His mom has fallen in love with their priest. She got divorced, and he got defrocked. I went over to their house, and his new stepdad and mom were doing naked yoga on the middle of the living room. They didn't even flinch and just said hi when we walked through the room. Story 31. Weirdest thing, what I saw was when I was about 13, 14, went to friend's house first time, and we played around with toys and their computer. Everything was normal until she got bored, and she said she will get their pet cat so we could play with the cat. Thought nothing of it. Said sure. And when she got the cat in room, the cat tried to escape. I thought it was a bit weird, but I was assuming because that cat hasn't seen me ever. But no, that was not the case. She proceeds to get the cat to the bed and basically starts to hump it. While making moaning sounds, she thought it was funny while I looked in horror. Gladly, the cat got away from her, and she got mad that her cat left her fun session. Asked me, do I want to try that too? And I said no. She says, oh, why not? It's fun. And I have done it multiple times. I found it very disturbing. So I just said that I need to go home. Dad is waiting me. Sorry, I went back home and told my dad, who called Animal Protection Services. After I found out that they took their animals away, and just recently I Googled her name, and she was in jail for animal abuse. Story 32. My dad told me a story about one of his friends. When my dad and his friends would visit this kid's house, they always had a massive pile of chips. The fries kind, not the crisp kind, for Americans, for dinner. A massive mountain of them. He had this every night for his dinner, and was obese cause of it. The strangest part was that every time the chips would be covered head to toe in dog hair, he just still ate them like it didn't matter. My dad didn't go back there much and never ate his dinner there again. They called him dog chips from then on. Edit, because I just remembered. His father was also abusive to him, but it was kept secret. One Christmas day, his dad pushed him down the stairs. He was hospitalized for a while and didn't see his dad after that. Some of the kids at school would joke after that, what did Jonesy get for Christmas? 2 broken ribs and a black eye, LMAO. Story 33. When I was a teen, my ex-GF slept on a mattress on a hardwood floor with no bed box spring, not so bad, but roughly 6 feet away from her was a litter box overflowing with cat poop. It was a tiny cat. No way it did this all in a few days, a week. No way to pass as normal. The carpets in her house were soggy. I kept my shoes on. I didn't sit in any furniture when I was there. I wanted to break up with her, but when my dad picked me up that day, cell phones were not for everyone at this point. Her mom asked my dad if I could go to Easter breakfast with them in a few weeks, and he said sure. I got to meet the rest of the crazy family. She confessed to cheating on me when we were alone that day. Easiest breakup. Story 34-2. Different things still stand out. First friend, His dad would openly yell at him about little stuff, like not having taken the trash out. My understanding was always that those things should be handled after the friend leaves. Guest protocol, so to speak, really caught me off guard and make me uncomfortable. Nobody enjoys seeing their friend get in trouble. It was a yes sir type of father-son relationship, which made me uncomfortable because my dad was always very loving and treated me like a friend when we'd do activities together. Only if I was being out of line would he ever get stern or sound angry. Second friend, two brothers to be exact. Their parents were way more strict than I was used to. 30 minutes of video game time per day, forced us to go outside and play in the summer heat, etc. It never felt abusive, just controlling. It was another yes sir, no talking back to your parents household. They did follow guest protocol though, but it sucked knowing that after you left, your friends were going to have to deal with whatever consequence. The part that's the most weird and probably wouldn't fly today is that if you uttered the phrase no fair or anything similar when regarding a rule or decision from the parents, you'd be forcibly tickled. Even guests, it didn't matter. You learned real quick no to complain about their house rules, even if it was something your own parents did differently, because you'd absolutely get dogpiled and tickled by their dad and the other kids. Granted, we'd join in and tickle our friend too when the time came. 15 years ago, it seemed like just a weird, silly thing, but it's definitely not something that'd fly today. Those parents seem to have mellowed out a ton since their sons have grown up, though, and he's still one of my good buds. Story 35, a loving family. Going to my friend's home, I remember I was always shocked when their mother would make us food, when their family would say they loved each other casually, when their brothers and sisters would be nice to them. I constantly felt like I had been lied to my whole life. At home, everyone was always cold. My brother never ever hugged me or said anything nice to me. I wasn't bullied at school, but my brother has always found the best name to call me in order to make me feel like trash. My mother protected him and was constantly arguing with my father. My father cheated on her dozens of times, to the point of me knowing about this when I was 7 without anyone telling me. Whenever they had a fight, he'd just leave us for days without saying anything, and I remember my mom crying. We never had a good family moment. No one ever says they love the other. We do love each other very much, but we're very cold about it. My mother has attempted to say she loves us more often, but I find it awkward and weird, so I find it super hard to say I love her back, although I do. I even have a very bad feeling about touch. I hate being hugged or touched in general because no one at home used to do that. So whenever I went to my friends' homes, I was baffled by any love demonstration. I guess it's normal, but it was definitely not normal to me. Story 36, not weird, but gross. But growing up, a friend of mine's house was roach infested. But for some reason, that's where everyone wanted to hang out. Roaches literally covered the walls. It was Pampers everywhere, but my friends acted as if it was normal. They used to literally cook inside that house. One day I brought my cousin over who wasn't from the neighborhood. Within 5 minutes, he couldn't take it anymore. He tried to whisper, "Why is it so many roaches in here?" But my friend heard him. It was awkward as hell. We left. Story 37. One of the first times I spent the night at a friend's house, they made waffles for breakfast, like homemade waffles, and I was super excited. They set a container of corn syrup on the table and nothing else. I was extremely confused and asked if they had maple syrup, and they kind of laughed and got it out for me. But like, who the does that? I've never heard of or seen anyone use corn syrup. They also kept their 2 liters of pop on the counter. Now, if you wanted it cold, you just put an ice cube in it. I guess that not too crazy, but the pop was obviously flat all the time. Story 38. I've been reading these for days, literally days. Here's mine. Super late, but I didn't want to lose my place while reading. In my teens, I go hang out at a friend's house that I've hung out with quite a bit, but never eaten dinner with them. It's getting time, and the mom asked me if I'll stay for dinner. They're old hippies, the parents, and while they are quite quirky and a little messy, they are pretty normal and we all got along great. Dinner is served, lemon chicken with mashed pots and green beans, very normal for an American family. We sit down and I notice there's no silverware, not a fork in sight. The whole family starts eating with their hands, picking up chicken, not strange in itself, IMO, fingering through green beans, and get this, shoveling in mashed potatoes with their fingers. So I ask if I can have a fork, and they all look at each other like I've just sprouted another head. And the mom says, "You don't need to get silverware dirty, dear. God gave you perfectly adequate hands to eat with. I just ate the easy stuff," and lied and said I was allergic to potatoes. Not the strangest thing, and nowhere near the grossest from the list of horrors I've just read. But I do remember noting that none of them even washed their hands before digging in. On a side note, this family had a huge wall-to-wall fish tank in their tank room that held 2 full-grown electric eels. I was told they shorted out the tank electric several times, and there were boxes of extra tank stuff like pumps and lights unopened next to the tank. For some reason, the German hand food stands out to me as strange, but the eels were just cool. Story 39. Their parents actually caring for each other, them being a close family, playing games and watching TV together. This took a while to become normal to me. At my friends' places, I always felt awkward, and that never really went away. I remember the first time coming over to my then-girlfriend's place, and her parents actually hugging me and actually making me feel welcome felt like a punch to my gut. That was the time I really understood my family is nothing like others. Story 40. I once spent the night in a girl's house who lived next to my grandma. We were definitely under 13, probably between 8 to 10 years old at the time. I only ever saw the girl when I visited my grandma a few times a year. Anyway, I distinctly remember when it was time to go to bed being told by her parents that they would have to lock us into her bedroom so her two younger brothers couldn't get in. There was a lock really high up on the outside of the door that only the adults could reach. I remember being really weirded out by this and not liking the idea that I had no choice on when I could leave the room. What if I woke up at night and had to go pee? The girl told me to just go in a bucket that she had in her room specifically for that purpose. That freaked me out even more. But the girl acted like it was totally normal, and I was too nervous to say anything, so I just dealt with it and decided to stay anyway. Nothing bad happened, but it definitely left me creeped out and uncomfortable. I remember waking up early in the morning and having to use the bucket since the parents still weren't awake. The girl didn't wake up for a while either, so I just sat next to her window, staring outside and considering stepping out onto the roof to escape, because I was scared the adults would forget we were locked in her room and never let us out, lol. Story 41. Not a friend's house, but at an Airbnb I recently stayed at, I noticed there were plastic disposable tubs being washed in the sink every day. I thought it was yogurt. Well, on closer inspection, it was a dairy product, but definitely not something you should be eating a pint of every day. Sour cream. I'm not even sure what they were eating it with, or if they just ate it out of the container. Also found that all of their cabinets were full of disposable containers that they kept and stored, but also didn't use. Story 42. I was maybe 10 when I went to sleep over at my best friend's house. Things were normal at first. We played games. We watched TV. We played on her dad's work computer. It was great. As all good things do, the fun ended the moment my friend's older brother got home. I always thought her brother was so cool because he was maybe 5-ish years older than us. My opinion changed rather quickly after this visit. At first, her brother kept standing behind us while we were sitting on their couch. Weird, but okay. Then he began asking my friend to come into his room. My friend kept saying no and rolling her eyes. Okay then. I tried to ignore this too, even thought my little alarm bells were going off. Thanks, Mom, for raising me on the Cops TV show. Eventually, the brother gave up this tactic and decided to switch it up, I guess. I remember he first asked my friend if she would come into his room for $10. My friend said no. Her brother upped the offer to $15. Again, my friend said no, so her brother turned to me and offered me the $15 to go to his room. My mind was blown. $15 seemed like a crap ton of money to my child brain, but again, my little alarms were still ringing. Before I could answer, my friend looks me dead in the eye and tells me I'll regret it if I go in her brother's room. I was freaked out. Her brother stormed off to his room, and I figured maybe that was the last we'd see of him for the evening. But no, that would have been too easy. The universe could not have that. After my friend's mom made us dinner, I needed to go to the restroom. As I was doing my thing in there, I noticed the doorknob start to jiggle a little bit. Being the innocent child I was, I thought someone needed to use the restroom, so I yelled that the restroom was occupied. That didn't stop the doorknob from jiggling, thought. I was starting to sweat. I have no idea how long that went on for, but at the time it felt like forever. Suddenly I heard shouting from the other side of the door. My friend's mom went to check on me and saw her son standing in front of the bathroom door. Needless to say, I called my mom immediately after I came out of the restroom and went home. It wasn't until I was older that I happened to remember this. Maybe I was overreacting, but those two incidents alone freaked me out, and I stayed away from my friend's house. Story 43. Had a friend who turned 18 and her parents just stole her identity to open a credit card. She thought it was to help build up her score. They just kept taking out credit cards in her name and maxing them out. Never paid on a single one, and they all went to collections. When I met her in college, she had a massive amount of credit card debt. Her parents did this to all 5 of their kids, and they all thought it was a normal part of growing up.